name's Selwyn Skiggs. I've been in Newfoundland since May 2013. I emigrated to Canada because my wife originally comes from Deer Lake, and we decided to move to Deer Lake. Her parents were getting a bit older, and we just decided that perhaps it would be a better move for us. Laurie, my wife, wanted to come back, and I was quite happy to do that, and I felt it was a change, would be a good change in life. And I knew that if I didn't do it, I'll probably regret it for the rest of my life. So we decided, after a lot of deliberation, this is where we would go. And we went into motion, and I arrived on the 8th of May, 2013, into Deer Lake. And from there, we built our own house, found employment, and we've been here living in the community since then.
Right, and hello listeners at home, this is Nathan for Cabot Tale and Trails, a page one story music collection. Our very first episode will begin with Selwyn Skiggs and his story on how he came to Newfoundland and Labrador. So where did you work in England?
I was a civil servant. I worked for the government. I worked for the Department for Works and Pensions. What I did, I worked on the employment side. So one of my jobs was to check out people who were out of work. We would try and find them jobs. If we couldn't find them jobs, we would give them payments, which we called in England job seekers allowance, when they're out of work. There's a lot of conditionality that is different from your own employment insurance. They had to attend to the job centre, which was the name of our office, every 2 weeks and show us evidence that they had been actively seeking employment. If they could show us that they'd been actively seeking employment, we would pay their benefits so they had money to live on. If they hadn't been looking for employment, we had the right to sanction them, and this could be stop some or all of their money for persistent offenders, or maybe they needed extra help and to go to a specialist. We had different advisors who could help them, disability advisors, and all sorts of different advisors who were able to try and place them in suitable employment. But I was very lucky in the department because I moved around to different jobs within the department in my time there. I had a lot of variety. That was how I started, but then I went on to become a lean practitioner, and I don't know if any of you know what that is, but we used to look at the processes of work within our department and see if we could make them more efficient,
right,
for a better customer outlook.
Yeah, that's a very good position to have. What was one thing that stuck with you during your time at the DWP?
I'm a very orderly person, and I liked the orderliness of working for the government. Now, it doesn't suit everybody, but for me, I enjoyed that, to be in that position. I really enjoyed the work. As I said, I had a lot of variation in my work. I found that good. This doesn't suit everybody, but I like to work across different departments. There was always a degree of satisfaction when you could put somebody in a job who had been out of work for a long time, and you could work with people. I really enjoyed working with unemployed people to try and find them work and give them the help they needed.
That's good. Yeah, it's always nice when you don't know what you're going to be getting into when you walk in for the day. It makes things very interesting, doesn't it? And
one area I particularly enjoyed, if that's the right word, I don't know if it's right, it was a challenge. I worked as the benefits advisor at Exeter Prison. Within 6 weeks of a prisoner due to be released, we would interview them and first of all find out, number one, have you got a job to go to when you are released? Yes or no. If it was a yes, then my job was over. I didn't have a job with them. If it was a no, we would try and do one of two things. We had employers who were quite happy to take on ex-offenders, and we would contact them and say we had this ex-offender, and we would try and place them in positions that we thought were suitable for them. There were constraints because a lot of the prisons came out on parole, and there were constraints put on them by the parole board. For instance, there might be locations they couldn't work and types of work they weren't allowed to do, and maybe locations that they weren't allowed to be near. So that put a constraint on it, but we would try and place them accordingly. However, if we couldn't, what we would do then is what we call set up a claim for them. What that meant was, when they came out, they were ready to start claiming their unemployment benefit, rather than them coming out with nothing and having to go to the unemployment office, wait for 2 weeks before they could claim money. And of course, the problem was then with a lot of offenders, if they had no money for 2 weeks, they were going to then get money somehow. So the claim was set up. So when they came out, we would find out where they lived and find out the nearest job centre to them and say, you will now go to this job centre the day after your release. You will sign a form and you will get your first payment that day. So this way it meant that they had money as soon as they came out.
Oh yeah, that's actually a pretty smart idea.
It was an idea set up by the government of the day to stop them sliding back into their ways, because with most people, they don't know when they're going to be unemployed and they need to start claiming. However, it's completely different with prisoners. They know what exactly we knew, and they knew exactly what day they were going to be released.
Right.
So we knew which day their claim would start weeks in advance.
Right, yeah.
So we could set all that up and get it ready for them.
Right, yeah, you can get a lot of preparation that way, right?
Yeah, so when they went, their paperwork was completed. So when they went to the local job centre, they went in and said they have an appointment book. They go straight to their advisor, who would say, yes, your paperwork was done for you. Here we are. You've obviously, it's only your second or third day out, so we just need you to sign. This will be your first payment. And then it will be explained to them, you need to look for work, and we understand the constraints put upon you by the parole board. So, I mean, it wouldn't be a case of saying to them, well, can't you go and work in this type of job? And they'd say, well, no, because the parole board said I can't do that type of work. And the constraint might be put on. And if they broke their parole, they were back in. So you had to work really hard with them and try to place them. It was lovely when you could place them in a job before they came out of prison, and they could go back into a job. As soon as they came out of prison, they could go into useful employment. Unfortunately, a lot of times that wasn't the case. So you were paying them benefits, but because you were paying them benefits from day one, it really helped them, and that hopefully it would keep them on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, that's always the point, I think.
Yeah.
Changing topics here, what's the biggest source of culture shock from living in the UK to Canada?
Everything is a culture shock to start with. There is no way. If anybody asked me advice and said to me, I'm going to immigrate, what advice will you give me? And I say, be completely open-minded, because nothing will ever prepare you for what's coming up. No matter how much you read about where you're going to go, the country, the area, the town, nothing will ever prepare you for that culture shock. And it's peculiar. Sometimes it's the smaller things that catch you out rather than the big things. But the whole outlook is completely different. For me, everything suddenly changed. First of all, the weather. One thing I knew here when I came over, I knew it was going to be cold in the winter. I know there was going to be a lot of snow, something I'm not used to. I wasn't prepared for how quickly the weather can change. I wasn't prepared for... Well, when I was in England, we might get snow every 3 or 4 years, and we might get 2 or 3 inches, and it looked lovely, and, you went out and you shoveled it, and, it was nice, and all the neighbours were out shoveling theirs, and we'd have a laugh and a joke. And the first time I shoveled snow here, it was quite fun, and you shoveled it away, and then the next day there was some more.
Right.
And then after a few days, the novelty starts wearing off. And I always remember my wife saying to me, you used to complain about the rain in England, but at least you didn't have to shovel the rain, did you?
That is right, yeah.
And that is a big culture shock. But also the little things. Living in a country with different time zones.
Right.
We didn't have, where I came from in the United Kingdom, one time zone. It's different. Somebody's at work, for instance, sometimes we have Zoom meetings, and somebody said, Zoom meeting's at 12 o'clock. And I put it down on my calendar for 12 o'clock, and 12 o'clock I'm ready for a meeting, and nobody was there. And then I'd look at it and it would say Atlantic time or Eastern time. So then it was a question for me, who wasn't used to different time zones, having to go on the computer. It's 12 o'clock in Newfoundland, so what time's it going to be? What time's that meeting going to be in Atlanta? Oh, I've missed it. For most people here who've been brought up with that, that's not an issue. But for somebody who isn't,
right.
And of course, driving is another thing. I'm driving on the other side of the road.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that would be a very big shock.
I always remember the first week I came here. We came here, I think, on the Tuesday. And on the Sunday, I'd had my licence changed. The first couple of days I came here, I got my driver's licence changed from a British driving licence to a Newfoundland driving licence. That was no problem. And I was driving on my first week, and Laurie said to me, she said, well, you should go out on your own, she said, because, the car needs some gas in it. There's another change. They call it petrol in England because gas is natural gas that comes out of you use for powering your stove and your heating. But so that was a change for me, having to say gas instead of petrol because nobody would know what I meant. And so I went to the gas station and I went in and I filled the car up and no problems at all, and went in and paid for it with my new freshly issued bank card and absolutely no problem. Came back out, went, got back in the car, shut the door, looked and said, where's the steering wheel?
Okay, because, that would be on.
I got in the wrong side, and there was a car behind me. So I got out, I didn't make any eye contact with this driver behind me because I felt such a fool, and got out and walked around the other side and got in and drove off. And I always remember that. And even now, and I've been here now for 12 years, just occasionally I'll still do it. Even after all this time, sometimes without thinking, I'll go to get in the wrong side of the car.
Right, yeah, your brain is on autopilot when you're getting into a vehicle, right?
If you've been driving for 30 years, getting in the right-hand side of the car, it does make a bit of a change to get in that side of the car.
Oh, for sure. I would say that would be pretty disorientating the very first time you're in a car and you're sitting in the driver's seat and you're on the other side of the car.
It is, but having said that, when you're actually driving, it's not as difficult as you think because everything's the other way around. Everything's the other way around. The thing that I do find difficult, left-hand turns.
I see.
Because my brain's telling me to get on the left-hand side of the road when I make a turn into a junction. So you have to be aware of that to start with. And you've got to concentrate because once you've been driving a few years, you do it on autopilot.
Right.
So I've been driving for years on autopilot on some very busy roads. And all of a sudden I came here and I've got to start using my brain again for driving.
And I noticed one thing around here, especially in the winter, is that the lines on the road will be gone.
That's a big deal here. I mean, I've noticed here when I'm driving in England, all the roads have lines on them. And you basically go by the lines. I mean, here you've got to go by signs, especially for crossings, for pedestrian crossings. There's nothing in the road.
Oh, there wouldn't be.
There's a sign, and even stop signs at the end of roads. You've got to be aware. You've got to look for the signs and not the markings on the road because there ain't any.
There aren't any,
and that is different.
Right, and it's almost like they're only here for a couple of weeks when they're here because the weather is just so hard on the paint.
Right, the weather's hard on the paint and hard on the roads.
Right.
So
that kind of implies that you didn't have too many potholes or not the level of potholes that you've seen.
Oh, good gracious, no. I mean, you've got to remember in England, if it goes down to -5, that's a big deal. That'll be in the newspapers, So we don't get the freeze and thaw like you do here. So although we do get some potholes in the winter, nowhere near what you get here. And because we've got so few, they can get out and fill them up straight away because they're not full of snow and ice.
Right.
Because they thaw, they can go out and fill them as they come up. So the roads are generally better that way. But I understand why they're so bad here. You don't have a chance all through the winter.
Oh, you don't know. And then the freezing and unfreezing cycle.
Yeah, and we don't get that. We might get a couple of cold days below freezing, and then you'll have 3 or 4 weeks in the winter when it doesn't get down to freezing. I mean, we don't have a construction season in England. The construction season runs from January the 1st to December the 31st. You can build all year in England. It's a bit colder in the winter. It's very rarely the construction stops for a cold period. That would be really unusual we might have a cold snap for 2 or 3 days when they can't mix cement or whatever, but usually building all the year round in England.
Right, yeah, that's something that we here have is a construction season where you can only really build for so many weeks or months throughout the year.
That's right, yeah.
And speaking of differences, what are some similarities between Honiton and Deer Lake?
Honiton is a smaller town, but it's a bit bigger than Deer. It's about 12,000 population, I believe, when I left. So it's a slightly bigger town, but it's very similar with the smaller shops. We tend to have a wider selection of smaller family-run shops in the town. We've got the big box stores. Well, one which is called Tesco, which is a main grocery store, but that's out of town. But in the actual town itself, all our shops are really centred on 2 roads, all within walking distance of each other. So you can actually, when you go out shopping, you can go out and just shop.
Right.
In walking distance. But as for being a small town, yes. And another similarity, with Deer Lake is Deer Lake has Cornerbrook near it, which is about a 30 to 40 minute drive from Deer Lake, which is a bigger centre.
Right.
In Honiton, we had a 30-minute drive to a city called Exeter. So we had a city near. So that meant anything we needed that we couldn't get in Honiton, normally we could go to Exeter and get it, as you can in Cornerbrook. And usually, and I can see the same thing here where people tend to occasionally go to Cornerbrook because they need something specific that can't be got in Deer Lake. So they'll spend the day shopping in Cornerbrook, just as the same as we would in Honiton, drive or get the train to Exeter to do our shopping there, because there were things, because being a city, there are a bigger range of things we get. So yeah, that's a very big similarity to the town. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's very interesting. Right. And I love how naturally that springs up that you have that sort of day, like maybe once a month, where you go out to get the things that you can't get in your hometown.
That's correct. Yeah. Things are evolving because of Amazon.
Right.
And that, I mean, and that's something now, I mean, nobody wants for anything. The only difference is we use Amazon a lot in England. And normally, because England's a very small country with a very dense population, normally a standard delivery on Amazon will be anywhere from 2 to 5 working days. You've got to plan a bit more here to get something from, say, online shopping. But normally, if we need anything, we'll go to Cornerbrook and maybe spend the day doing a bit of shopping, maybe have something to eat. Well, then we'll usually make a day of it when we go to Cornerbrook.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like you would. Yeah, I mean, I guess you're there anyway, and you already spent the gas to get there. Yeah,
so we'll tend to do the shopping as we did when we used to go, when we lived in England. We'd go to Exeter. We'd either drive in, or more than likely we'd take the train.
Right.
Actually, it was cheaper to get on the train than it was to drive. Because one factor you don't have here, which we've got in England, is parking. Not that it's difficult to park, you've got to pay to park. Oh. There's very little on-street parking because of residential areas, because most residential streets only allow residents to park, and they have a badge in their car. If you're parked there, you will find that not only will you get a ticket, but usually your car will be clamped. Ah. Parking is much more harshly enforced than it is here. I've noticed here, you can get away with parking in a fire lane for a little while. You can get away with parking on the side of the road. If it says no parking in England, you don't park there because you can get clamped or even towed away.
Right.
And there'll be no warning. So you tend to have to park in car parks, or parking lots as you call them, and you'll pay. And sometimes when you add up the cost of the gas to get to the city plus the parking, it's a darn sight cheaper to jump on the train and go in on the train.
That would be something that you would have to budget for. It's something I never thought about, that you would need to keep in mind when you're leaving to make sure they have enough money for parking.
Oh yeah, I mean, a lot of it now is done on smartphones with apps, but before we left, a lot of it was what they call pay and display. You would pull into the parking lot and park your car. You would then go to a machine and you'd put money in the slot, and it would give you a ticket with an expiry time on it. So depending on how long you thought you were going to be shopping for, you would buy so many hours of parking, and you stick that little sticker, that little ticket, on the inside of your windscreen. And then somebody would come around from the municipality, because most of the car parks are run by municipalities from the city of Exeter. They would check, and if you overstayed, you would normally get a ticket. If you only overstayed for a while, you would get a surplus charge, which would be automatically levied to the owner of the car. It's always levied to the owner of the car, and if it was somebody else, it's up to the owner then to get the other person to pay the fine.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. So, and if you were there a persistent offender, you would get clamped.
Oh, okay.
And then you would have to pay a very high release fee to get that car clamped. So that was one of the reasons we like to go by train, was because it was more expensive, and you were always worried that if something could crop up and you couldn't get back in time to get your car out or to add more parking. So we used to tend to use the train rather than do that.
Right, yeah, that sounds like it would be a lot more convenient, right? I mean, you wouldn't have to worry about parking if you haven't brought your car with you.
That's correct, and the trains ran from the town. We took about 20 minutes to get to Exeter, and they dropped you off in a station called Exeter Central, which, as the name would suggest, it's right in the centre of the city. You're right in the centre. You come up the steps and you're in the middle of the city. And luckily for the town I live, the trains ran every hour on the half hour. So you knew you could get a train you had to be there on the half hour, jump on the train and go home. And it was a good service, and it was good for shopping. And most people use the train to go shopping, and most people use trains in England quite a lot.
Would that be a thing you'd like to see here in Newfoundland? Maybe a railway?
Yes, like I know you used to have a railway, and they shut it down and built the Trans-Canada Highway. But I really think that maybe if it was just one line that ran from the boat at Port aux Basques to St John's, just one line going all the way in, might be a good idea. And I think there would be a need for it, especially in the winter when the road conditions can be quite difficult.
Right.
And I mean, I could see if you had a service even between Deer Lake and Cornerbrook, I can see people would even use that.
I can see that too, right? Yeah. I mean, people use the bus here, but I can definitely see that there would be a base for people who would maybe want to ride train instead.
Yeah, the only thing I can see holding it back is probably the critical mass of people.
Oh, probably.
That could be the problem here, whereas, there's a lot more people densely populated, so that may be the problem, whether it wouldn't be economically viable.
Yeah, I think that's why the railway shut down, was because we have such a sparsely populated area.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of rural towns that are sprinkled around the coast mostly.
Yeah.
And so it's very hard to connect everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What was one thing you found most interesting in your lean practitioner work?
Lean is all about getting the job done more efficiently, but without making any concessions to the quality of the work. In fact, we were looking to make it more efficient, so it increased the quality of the work as well. And it's surprising. The way we would go in, usually 2 or 3 of us would go in lean practitioners. And first of all, we'd just sit around watching people work. But we're noting how they're doing it. And after a while, we'd start questioning them on different aspects of their work. Right. But the main thing with lean was we didn't just go in and just look at the job and say, well, that you should do this. We involved the staff who'd done the job. Because if they've got input into it, they're more likely to cooperate and follow the lean practices themselves. So we would get them to invest in what we were doing as well. We would ask them, sometimes why do you do it this way? And sometimes they would say to us, we do it this way because we need to do this, and we would accept that. And sometimes we'd say, well, do you think this would be, we could adapt this and do this a different way? And sometimes they'd say, yes, that's a good idea. We never thought of that. And sometimes they would say, well, we've always done it this way and we're comfortable doing it this way. And we say, well, sometimes we do need to have a look at the system. We do need to make it more efficient.
Right.
And as you know, with governments, they're always looking to make savings.
Oh, for sure.
Without any concession to the quality.
Right.
And that was one of the things we'd do with flowcharts. Look at the job. We might not know anything about the job that particular department was doing. That wasn't what we weren't looking at what the job was. We were looking at how the job was done. Oh, that's what we looked at, how the job was done, how it started, and what was the final result.
Right.
Our job was to make sure that we still got to that final result, but maybe we cut out some stages. Maybe we put practices in place that would, for instance, cut out some of the mistakes.
Right.
And it's something that sticks with you. You learn over the years. You become a lean practitioner, but you pass that on. And I find even now, since I've been here, I've adopted lean practices in the job I do now. And there's certain things I do, and I've persuaded others that maybe this is a better way of doing it, and we need to do this. It's something that stays with you, and it stays with you in your personal life as well. You suddenly start looking at things sometimes in a slightly different way. You think to yourself, well, why do we do it that way? Why don't we do it this way? This is more efficient. And you're looking at cutting out waste in a job. You're looking at the waste, the time wasting. That sometimes, I mean, if you can cut out, say, a mistake, sometimes that can save you.
Oh, it will save you a lot of time,
It can save you quite a lot of time. And sometimes a mistake might only take you a minute, but if you're making that mistake 10 times a day, that's 10 minutes a day. That's nearly an hour a week. That's 50 hours a year. That's the equivalent of one employee doing nothing.
Right.
Apart from putting mistakes right all year. You've got an employee putting the mistakes right. So that's what we were looking at. We're looking at lean is about. See, people seem to think, and when we first when the department decided to adopt lean, people think it was about cutbacks. It wasn't in the main. It was about efficiencies, making the job more efficient. Because, like I said, there are always going to be cuts, but it's making that job a lot more efficient and easier for the staff to do.
Right, because
putting in practices and trying to get them to adopt practices that we could teach them, that, you know, and being able to, and another important thing, a no blame culture.
Right.
If somebody makes a mistake, put your hand up. Say, I've made this mistake. And we would analyse that mistake. And the first thing we'd say is, what is what we call the sticking plaster solution? It's a sticking plaster solution. What that means is, let's put this right. So we put it right. And then we look, why did it happen? And sometimes you could look at it and say, this happened because of that. Can we put something in place? That will stop this happening again?
Right.
So that was the second thing. And that was the most important thing. If we can keep stopping it happening.
Right.
There are always going to be mistakes. That's going to happen. That's life. But if you can put in practices where you can adopt a practice that stops the mistakes in the main, you are making things a lot more efficient.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty important thing to do just in your own everyday life. That would save you a lot of time, a lot of headache, potentially a lot of energy from things that are preventable, right? Because that's the kind of job that you would do, right?
Yes, you look at it. I mean, if you want to make a job more efficient, let's cut out the mistakes, because going back over things, and it was having everything to hand as well. One example we were given, they said, let's say you open up your office in the morning or you sit down at your department. And the first thing you've got to do is, where did I put my mouse for my computer? Where have I put that to? And you look for it for a minute. We try to make people make sure that they've got everything on hand, that they're ready. You know, even simple things of having an orderly workspace can make things a lot better. Routines. I'm going to start in the morning. Is there enough paper in the printer for what I need today? So I don't get up here halfway through a job and have to stop to load the printer.
Right.
It's all little things. Is the printer in the right place? Is everything I have in hand? And we used to use the 20-80 rule. 80% of the tasks you do are from 20% of the work. So if you've got 20% of the equipment or the paperwork you need, you can complete 80% of those jobs without having to go and look for anything. You're only looking then for the other 20%. That can make you more efficient.
That can. I can see where that can come from, yeah.
Yeah. It's not just about cutbacks. It's about good working practices all the way through.
Right, yeah. It could be from the very little things, like knowing where your mouse is, so you're not spending time
to the really big things. And companies that have adopted lean and use it all the time, Toyota,
yeah,
are one company. Pratt & Whitney, who make jet engines in the United States, they're very big on lean. And Ryanair, the biggest airline in Europe, have just started adopting lean practices and bringing in practitioners to carry out these changes.
Oh, very well. That sounds like that can be a very good trend to follow.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And it's one of constant improvement. You don't sit back and say, we've got this procedure right. You know, we don't need to look at it. You should go back and revisit it every now and again, because work evolves.
Oh, it will.
And different practices come in. So you need to revisit it every so often. But normally, if you've trained the staff who are doing the job and you've got them into the mindset, they will be proactive rather than reactive. They will come to a lean practitioner and say, can you look at this? I think, what do you think? I think if we did it this way, do you think that would be better? And it's nothing better when you're a lean practitioner and a member of staff actually comes to you from a department and say, can you look at something we're doing? I think we can do this a bit better, but we just need your input. What do you think? Right. And that is so satisfying, because you know you've done your job properly. Oh,
for sure. That will very, very much feel like you got your job done and job done right. Oh, I just looked at the time. Thank you guys very much for listening to this very first recording, maybe not episode, but recording for Page One's Cabot Tales and Trails, a Page One Story music collection. This has been Nathan and
Selwyn.
bye.
Bye.